All right, we're just going to jump right in and get started. Welcome back for another engaging and wonderful conversation. I'm biased when I say that, but that's no matter. Let's move on. If you didn't see last week's video, I talked all about the top 10 questions I get just regarding therapy in general, because I think it's really important to share knowledge and information and make you feel more comfortable in taking those next steps, especially if you've been considering therapy or thinking about therapy, or even like it's been just kind of a blip on the radar every so often, like, I might like to explore that. There's a lot of like fear that comes along with making that decision. So last week I dove deep into some of these big kind of questions and what that looks like. So if you didn't have a chance to see that video, I will leave the link below or somewhere so that you can access it. But this week I wanted to take a different take. This week I wanted to jump into some of the key indicators. I sound like I'm corporate. These are the key performance indicators you might be looking for. Anyways, I'm going to stop talking like a robot, but these are some of the key indicators that suggest you might be ready for therapy. Because, and let me just validate this right off the hop, deciding to go to therapy is not easy. A lot of times we get to the point where it's like, enough is enough. I can't take this anymore. Like, I don't even like being inside of my skin. At least this was my personal experience. Like, that's where I was at. And it was really at a point of crisis that I made the decision. And it's so sad that we get to that point. Unfortunately, is the reality, because if we think about it, we think about all the pressure supposed to culture puts on us, as women especially, to maintain this air of everything's okay and I'm so perfect and look at me, look at my perfect house, my perfect life, and I don't have a care in the world and I'm not sad. And I'm just like, the fact that this is what we're meant to put out there, to think about exploring therapy, or to say, you know what, things aren't right. I'm not feeling happy. I'm not feeling fulfilled. To say those things and to seek out support, there's still a stigma attached to it. So it takes a lot of bravery to do it. But the more people that say everybody needs therapy, I don't care who you are. I don't care if you are, like 1 year old all the way up to, 99, 100 years old. Everyone can benefit from therapy. So, but I understand that there's almost like a sense of anxiety around it. Like, oh my God, I don't even know what to do. I don't even know how to make the first step. Like, what are people going to think? And you have all these racing thoughts. And of course, that's your ego mind trying to protect you. And you're running a set of programs and all this stuff inside your brain that says, oh, this must mean I'm weak. And people are going to think I'm weak. And how dare I do something for myself, especially for those moms out there. How dare I do something for myself when everyone else needs of me? But I thought I would put together this sort of list of kind of things that you might be experiencing if you're kind of on that precipice of making a decision, of wondering even, is therapy for me? And I'm going to start with number one. And I've gone through it a lot in sort of the introduction of this video, and that is you're feeling called to do so. You're having an inclination that it might even be helpful. You're getting this little nudge. That's your intuition speaking to you, or the universe. It could be from God, depending on what your vibe is and what your beliefs and your values are. This could be the very first sign. If you've even been feeling that way. A lot of the clients that I work with say to me, I've been thinking about this forever. I don't know why it took me so long. So that's sort of your first indication and the first sign that it might be something you want to consider exploring. Am I saying you need to dive right in head first right now and call me and be like, Denise, look, I need to do therapy right now? For a lot of people, that's going to feel way too scary and it's going to feel way too much, right? But if you feel that way, absolutely, I'm here for you, no problem. But a lot of times it takes a little bit more than that. But that first sign, that very first indication is going to be you're feeling called to do so. Easy peasy. So let's get into some of the other reasons and some of the other ways to know you might be ready for therapy. Number two is these persistent, overwhelming emotions. Now, I say this with a caveat because it is good to have emotions. It is good to feel emotional. It is good to be somebody that feels things deeply. I'm not talking about simply feeling or, having emotions. This isn't what we're talking about. We're talking about overwhelming to the point where you don't even know how to handle it or how to feel it anymore. Like if you're feeling an overwhelming sense of sadness or an overwhelming sense of anger or anxiety that's persistent. Obviously all of us are going to have some sort of experience with some of these things as we go through life. That's just simply what it means to be a human being. But this is persistent, it's consistent, and it's overwhelming to the point where you just don't know how to handle it anymore. This might be one of those signs. For me, I experienced that a lot. I was unbelievably sad, just sad. And on paper, my life looked amazing, which I've shared with you many, many times, but I was deeply, deeply sad. And it was overwhelming where I was crying so often and I really didn't even know why. And it was just persistent. And that was one of those signs, especially for me. So if that's something you're struggling with, this could be a sign you might be ready, or you might be ready to at least explore the idea of coming to therapy. Because if it's interfering with your daily life and it's interfering with the quality of your life, then it's up to you to say, okay, I don't like the way this is feeling. I want to do something about it. If you're number three, if you're struggling in relationships, and this doesn't necessarily have to be just romantic relationships. When I'm talking about relationships, it could be relationships with friends, with colleagues, bosses, your family. It could be your intimate relationships. No matter what the case, if you're having struggles within your relationship, meaning there's a constant sense of isolation, or there's a sense of stress, or it feels really difficult to have conversations or communicate or just be in a relationship just in general, if they all feel really hard, there could be a repeating pattern there that you can explore with a therapist to kind of uncover, okay, what's going on here? What's at the root of this? And do it in a really safe way to make sure that you feel safe as a client. And that's the biggest benefit of therapy sometimes, is exploring some of these deep issues with somebody that is trained, that is licensed, and that knows how to do it with you safely, right? And I called it an issue, and I don't love that. Challenge. It's not an issue. There's nothing wrong with you. You're not broken. You have some challenges, and it's about unraveling patterns and understanding them and gaining new perspective and moving some of that energy out of the body in order to be more secure in your relationships moving forward. Number 3, major life transitions. This one goes without saying. If you've gone through a major life change, either big, it could be a big change or it could be a small change. If you've recently lost someone close to you, you're going through grief. If you've had a major career change, if you've had if you've moved across the country, there could be all kinds of things. But if you've gone through this major life transition, or if you went from, I know in my personal experience, when I went from working corporately, I thought I had it all figured out, and I was like, yeah, I got my corporate job and all that stuff, and things weren't feeling like they were right. And I made the transition of going back to school. That was a major life transition. That was a major career decision that I needed to navigate, and I needed to do it alongside my therapist because there was a lot of what ifs coming in. So that can be another big reason that you might seek therapy, is going through that major life change and feeling like you're not alone, because so much of these things and so much of the stuff I'm talking about, you feel very isolated, you feel alone in this, and a therapist can always make you feel like you're not alone, like you have someone that has your back and you're working collaboratively to source out solutions and move forward with confidence. Number 4, and this one, take this with a grain of salt, because I am not a fan of shaming anybody for their coping mechanisms, because coping mechanisms, whether it is in the form of any type of addiction, it could be alcohol, it could be drug, it could be gambling addiction, it could be shopping addiction, it could be sex addiction. No matter what the case is, I don't want to categorize any of them as unhealthy, because these are your coping mechanisms. This is what you've learned to rely on in order to either not feel or to deal with the heaviness of what you've been dealing with. So I don't like to categorize them as good nor bad. They are simply coping mechanisms. But a lot of people, and yourself included, you might view those and say to yourself, I feel like there could be a better way for me to manage some of this stuff coming up. So if you're struggling with any of those things that people categorize or tend to categorize as unhealthy, first of all, they probably don't know anything about addiction. So they probably shouldn't talk about it. Or they're struggling with addiction themselves and they're judging you anyways, because they feel shame about themselves. But, if you're struggling with any of these things, please know that there's a reason behind it and we can move through it together. I do not specialize specifically in addiction, but I find a lot of my clients, as we go through this process, begin to understand why they've been using addiction as a coping mechanism. And once you have that idea, and, once you have that understanding and you start to really own your worth and feel good about yourself, a lot of these tend to trickle away. But for those that struggle on a grander scale, obviously I might not be the right fit for you, but then you would want to seek out somebody that specializes in that. So number 6, just feeling stuck. And this is one most of my clients feel. I just feel stuck. I can't make any change. Things are meant to be like this forever. It doesn't matter what I do or how hard I try, things always stay the same. And I feel like I've been trying to change myself for a lifetime and nothing changes no matter how hard I try. And I just feel stuck. I lack motivation. I feel unfulfilled. I can't even see my own achievements. I don't even know what joy is. I don't know what makes me happy. I just feel stuck in a rut. And this is something that's most commonly felt by, I think, across the board, across all of the clients that I've dealt with. This idea of feeling stuck has been the number one thing that kind of pushes them and says, I need to figure something out. I need to do something for me, because if I don't do something for me, this feeling of stuckness is going to continue. So that is definitely a big one. And if you're struggling with feeling stuck, no, you're not alone. That's where I was. And I tend to refer back to myself because obviously as a therapist, my role is to maintain confidentiality. I cannot tell you about a lot of my other clients, but I can tell you about myself and my own experience, and feeling stuck was a big one for me. And that's really what pushed me into therapy as well. So number 7, intrusive thoughts. We call this intrusive thoughts, is kind of a jargony way of saying it, but negative thoughts, persistent negative thoughts we think the same set of thoughts day in and day out pretty well. Like we think, I can't remember the number off the top of my head, but let's say 60,000 thoughts a day. And of those 60,000 thoughts, 55,000 of them are going to be the same thoughts you had yesterday. Our thoughts tend to be cyclical. They are on repeat. They are a bad blockbuster movie that we just rewind and repeat every single day. It's like Groundhog Day, which is funny because on the day I am filming this, it is Groundhog Day. So that's funny. But yeah, it's the same set of thoughts. And once you've committed a thought to memory, and once you've thought it long enough, it becomes really hard to break some of those intrusive thoughts. The one that say you're not good enough, you're not worthy enough, you're not smart enough, you never make enough money, you'll never have the right relationships, you'll always be this way. All of those negative or intrusive thoughts, they become automatic. And the more you think them, obviously the more you think them, the more you begin to believe them to be true. But if I've learned one thing in all of my years practicing, it's you are not your thoughts. And that's a really hard lesson to learn and to put into practice, is knowing I am not my thoughts, that this is just simply on repeat, and that you can forge new thought patterns and you can break old thought patterns, but sometimes it requires the help of a therapist to be able to support you in doing that, because this is just going to want to go back to what it was doing. It's always just going to go back to what it was doing constantly. Rewind, replay, Groundhog Day. So if you're struggling with intrusive or negative thought patterns, this is something that can really be dealt with beautifully in therapy in a really safe way. Number 8 is a change in sleep pattern. And this one is interesting because if you are somebody that finds themselves like just waking up in the middle of the night, staring at the ceiling, you've got anxiety through the roof, you can't get back to sleep, your brain is on overdrive, and it's consistent and persistent, this is something we can also look at in therapy and understand what is the trigger for the anxiety. This is not specific to, like, obviously if you need to go to a sleep clinic, or it could be sleep apnea or all these things, that's one thing. But if this is, you're waking up in the middle of the night and you can't get back to sleep because you've got really intrusive thoughts going back to the one previously, and you just cannot get back to sleep, and the anxiety is overwhelming and you're tossing and turning, those are some things that we can definitely explore within the comfort of the therapeutic space as well. Number 9, loss of interest in activities. And this can be often called like a lack of motivation or apathy, where things that you used to do and used to bring you joy, it doesn't bring you joy anymore. Like if you were someone that was an avid soccer player, for example, and you used to love playing soccer, and all of a sudden you're like, no, I don't want to. Like I don't feel like doing this anymore. If there's a lack or a loss of interest in things, there could be something underlying that's causing some of this apathy. And again, within the walls of the therapeutic relationship, you can start to explore that and understand what's going on here. And how do we get excited about our passions? And how do we get excited about finding purpose in your day-to-day life? What does that look like? And doing it together so it doesn't feel so isolating. And finally, not really finally, but I'm going to blend kind of two together. So one is, long-term unresolved issues. If you have unprocessed trauma that you've never taken a look at because it feels too scary, it feels too big, therapy is a great place to do that. The majority of therapists are trained and educated in how to support you and how to create space for you while you explore some of these really difficult challenges that you experienced while you were growing up or just recently. If you're, going through, you've had kind of unresolved trauma, this is a great space to do it. And it's a great space to get all of this stuff out of your head, because if you're anything like I was, it's just been on repeat and been like poking at you and nudging at you your whole life. And to get it out with somebody that is just so safe and has your back, there's nothing quite like it, and is obviously trained in helping you work through some of that unresolved trauma. And then along with that tends to come, negative self-talk and low self-esteem. When you've got some of this unprocessed trauma, you tend to believe or commit to this narrative or this story of, I'm not good enough, I'm a bad person, this happened to me, I didn't stop it. So these are kind of tied together, these, unresolved traumas or challenges or whatever you want to call it, with negative self-talk and low self-esteem and self-doubt, they're all sort of part and parcel with one another, because you start to say to yourself, I should have known better, and all of these things. But these are some of the signs. There could be so many more, so many additional signs, but these are some of the really big ones and the most persistent ones. So hopefully that gave you some clarity around, or some ideas around, okay, I'm feeling a lot of these things. Therapy might be for me. And please keep in mind, finding a therapist is extremely personal. I talked about this last week as well too. Like, you've got to really shop around in a way. And if you don't know me, I am a licensed therapist. I work solely with empathetic women. I am located in the province of Ontario. So I am licensed to work with anybody within the province of Ontario. I do offer all of my services online, and I do it in a really, really safe and kind and compassionate way. So if that is something that you've been looking for, please feel free to send me a message, and we can set up a consultation time to talk. That is completely complimentary. You don't owe me anything for that. I just want to give you the opportunity to explore this, what that might be like, and to get any of your questions answered. So I will leave that in your very capable hands. But if you have any other questions, or you want to ask me anything, please just drop a comment below, and I will get back to you as soon as I can. But with that, I wish you a very gentle day, and I will see you next time.